Hello, my darlings, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, my name is Mariya. This channel is about spirituality. Please subscribe below so we can be YouTube friends. In this video, we're talking about destiny and free will. Is everything predetermined? Has your higher self just set this road up for you and there's nothing you get to decide? Or is free will the ultimate truth of the universe? This and much more in this video. I love this topic because it is significantly complex. If you watched my prior videos, in a lot of them I say that this is a free will-based universe. And so of course that means that there's a fair share of choice involved in our paths, in how far we come, in which roads we frankly take. But like in every good theory, like in every good concept, this one is not so straightforward. So when it comes to our destiny, when it comes to our fate, versus the question of the choices that we make and the free will, the truth is somewhat of a hybrid. When you come into this incarnation, your higher self does a significant amount of planning. It plans everything meticulously into, down to the tiniest detail. And the plan goes as follows. A very significant amount of resource of your higher self is being put into determining the setting and the conditions of your birth and early childhood. That, believe it or not, already determines a lot. Your higher self would choose whether you come into a family of means or you're born into poverty. It would choose a full family, like a full set of parents for you, or a family where one of the parents is not in the picture, or maybe neither of the parents is in the picture. It would plan, obviously, where you were born, what country, right? So a lot of the things are already predetermined for you. In other words, if our life was a board of chess, you come into a life and that board is already on the table. Not only that, but there are many figures in particular cells already. So that is not an empty or a blank slate. Life is already happening. And so you're being dropped in a body on top of a chessboard where the game is already in motion. And it is completely up to your higher self how to drop you and where to drop you. And not only that, but your higher self pre-selects the energies that you come with. How much masculine you're going to have, how much feminine you're going to have, the quality of vibration that you bring. Because our higher selves, our oversouls, are extremely vast. Think of your higher self as an ocean. You're not going to come with an ocean into one single human body. You're taking a water bottle. That's how much energy you're taking of your higher self compared to an ocean. So very, very little. Does your higher self determine what kind of water you bring with you? You bet it does. So everything about your energy that you bring, your higher self has already predetermined. Example, the water that is in that bottle is already either motivated or not motivated by certain things. It's already either a go-getter type of energy or a very mellow type of energy. It's already either very bossy or very creative. It's already either very empathetic or completely closed up. Do you guys catch my drift? It's like whatever is in that bottle is already been predetermined. Not only that, but remember, you are, at least initially, the combination, the trifecta of three energies. So your higher self, that water bottle that we just referred to, your mother and your father. And of course, your higher self knows exactly the kind of parents and the kind of people that both of your parents are, right? So just based on those energies that are going to go into your vessel, so much can already be predetermined. So much can already be predestined, if you will. And so no, unfortunately, I cannot say that there is no destiny whatsoever because that would not be technically true. So that point A from which you start is critical because the trauma that you're going to be dealt in the first 10 years of your life, which is a lion's share of trauma that you're going to be receiving, can be predicted just by the virtue of settings that you're being dropped into, right? For instance, if your higher self puts you in a family where one of the parents is a heavy drinker, you can imagine the kind of trauma that goes with it. There's probably a little bit of abandonment. There's probably a lot of aggression. There's probably from the side of the child, there's a lot of coping, and then there's a lot of people pleasing, right? There's a lot of tending to your own emotions in that child. That's just one example, as opposed to coming into a family where there is absolutely no money and barely, any food on the table. That already sets the person up for a very particular kind of need that is being unmet, right? So, they may be a little bit more prone to deciding once they grow up that they don't want to live that way and that they're going to try to make a living. And maybe that sets them on a path and a trajectory to change the circumstances of their family. My darlings, I have a very special announcement. This January, I'm going to be teaching a 3-week course on abundance, money, and manifestation called Thrive. I have been sitting on this work for over a year. About a year ago, I knew I was going to have to teach it one day. And then I just kept postponing it, knowing that it wasn't time. Now there is time. My universe started reflecting to me so many people in my vicinity that are amazing people on their spiritual journeys. And this concept of money just keeps coming up like a bad penny. Whether that is somebody who is not able to quit the job that they hate to pursue the calling of their heart because of money. And so they're essentially in golden cuffs. Whether that is people that I know that have given up on their spiritual calling because it was not paying the bills, frankly. They could not put the food on the table with whatever little they were charging. And they had to go and get a normal job. My world has been reflecting a true need to me. And that need is there are so many amazing people that haven't figured out a very fundamental energy of money and abundance and wealth. And for me, this is the energy that I have spent so much of my life decoding, you guys. You would not believe. Of course, I'm in business. I went to business school. And for the past 11 years, I've been building my company. What I have discovered about energy and abundance blows away any Harvard textbook. And in fact, I'll tell you that prior to my awakening, I too struggled to make money. Like, it was a chore, it was hard. Every single milestone financially was a thing I had to work so hard for. And then my awakening happened and spirit came into my life and I had to, or I was privy to, and I had the honor of learning from spirit all of the things that I now know to be true about manifestation and abundance and how the energy actually works. And once I was able to put all of that into practice, once I was able to remove the blockages that I had, money became so easy. Like, as a concept, as an energy, it's just so simple, actually, at the end of the day. And my business just soared. And I went from drudgery and crazy workloads and not knowing what the answers were to things seamlessly flowing and just things becoming easy as it came to abundance. And so I decided to put all of that into a course. This is the first course where my lower self, the one you're talking to right now, and my higher self emerged. And it is going to be a beautiful spiritual course, right? Like everything I do, we're going to dive deep. And so if you feel like it's your time to thrive, and if you would like to learn what my philosophy is, all of the things that I learned from spirit and how I was overcoming the obstacles on my path, I invite you to join me in January. All the info is on my website, thisismariya.com. The first 10 years of your life is where a lot of the trauma is being inflicted upon you. What is trauma? What is one trauma for one person is nothing to another. That's the funny part. So trauma is created by the energies clashing in a particular way. And trauma can be predicted based on the two energies in question. So in other words, your higher self can look at your energies and the energies of your father and determine with a 99.99% accuracy how the two energies are going to interact with one another, in which ways they're going to clash, in which ways they are going to be harmonious. Same is true for your mother. Same is true for your siblings. Same is true for your extended family. All of these players on the board are very well predetermined, right? So there's a lot of determinism in the game that we call life. Now, of course, you grow up. And when you grow up, that is when the choice becomes extremely prevalent. And I think that a lot of us live in the illusion that the whole world's our oyster. There's this big plate of options, a smorgasbord, and we can just choose whatever. That is not what generally happens, because based on the water bottle that you brought with you, you already have a propensity for certain things. For example, based on the energies that your higher self donated to you, with a 99% probability, your higher self can already tell you what your hobbies are going to be. What are the things that are going to draw you, and what are the things that won't attract you at all? Certain energies that your higher self may donate to you are very prone to like, okay, well, this one is a reader. This one is a little bit of a nerd. This one is a little bit of a gambler. Or maybe this one is into sports. So the energies that you bring really determine what you're going to be drawn to energetically, and the kind of people you're going to meet as a result, the kind of people you're going to be a vibrational match to. So in other words, our human incarnations are not such a really complicated thing to pre-plan based on the fact that you know all the variables going into this. That being said, there is free will. And time again, human beings that are incarnated are doing things that are, call it, not what their higher self planned, or maybe a little bit suboptimal, or really out of the left field. And that happens all the time, you guys. That being said, this is what I'm being shown in regards to fate and destiny. Any choice that you could be making, in the grand scheme of things, can send you down one of the three paths. From your higher self's perspective, there is a path that is most likely, they call it the middle path, upstairs. And it is the path where, without too much pressure in the pressure cooker, and without you displaying very unlikely outlier characteristics, most likely you're just going to be walking this middle road. Now, there is the higher road and the lower road, if that makes sense. The lower road is a path where, let's call it the less optimal path. It's a path where the decorations of your life are not going to be quite so nice. It's a path that's more rooted with hardships. Things are just harder on the lower path. On the higher path, quite the contrary. The higher path, or the highest path, is like the most optimal way that your incarnation can transpire. This is where the sailing is the smoothest. This is where you can achieve the highest heights. This is where you can learn the greatest lessons. And that is where the speed of learning is just so quick. And it's the most fast-paced of the three paths, of the three roads. The lower path is the least fast-paced. So things don't change quite as frequently. And you may be, stuck in certain things for quite some time. And how do you migrate between the paths, right? I think is the fascinating question. There are trigger events, or we can call them milestone events, whatever you want to call them. And they're very strategically placed on each of these roads. Like your higher self, by the way, preplans all three. You're not sent here with just like one little plan. No, your higher self plans the most likely way, the best, and the worst case scenario. Whatever choices you are making in the in-between are going to naturally net you out on one of the three paths. And just happens so. Like it may be borderline, like there are paths that are borderline between the two paths, but most of them are like smack in the middle of one of the three. Each of these three paths has significant milestones. It's almost like markers on the road. You're just traveling up this road and then there is a marker. And based on this marker, you get to make a choice. And there are only so many choices that can, big enough, so to say, that can transfer you from one path to the other. Only so many choices in your life. And based on what choices you make, or what commitments you make to yourself and others during those pivotal moments, your road kind of shifts. It turns right or it turns left. Very often, just to give you a quick example, you hear of awakenings from people when they have a near-death experience. There's like an NDA, or like, some kind of car crash or some kind of massive accident. And all of a sudden the person's like, I see the light. That is most of the time people traveling down the lower path. And in that moment, this is a trigger, or that's the milestone situation that I described to you, right? So that a car accident or an NDA, near-death experience, can be an example where from there you always are making a choice. In that moment in time, you're making a choice. Do I keep living the way I've been living? Or do I change my trajectory? And a lot of people, after experiencing a traumatic experience like this one, pardon the repetition, but they change the entire trajectory of their lives. There were so many stories from hospital beds where people were confined to a hospital bed for like weeks, if not months. They've been told that they would never walk again, that like something shifts and something changes. All of a sudden, they start making different choices. All of a sudden, there is a full-on recovery. It is because they've passed on from the slower path, from the slower, less optimal road to either the middle or the highest, right? Like in these paths, you can actually even jump through the middle road and like move to the highest path. So in other words, when asked the question, what is determined and what is free will? The answer is there are 3 paths. Call them predetermined. And a lot of these 3 paths, there's a lot of consistency regardless and irrespective of the choices that you make. You usually net out at roughly the same point B. So there is like, on the lower path, there is a point B. On the middle path, there is a point B. And on the higher path, there is a point B. If you're traveling down a particular trajectory and you've made 17,000 choices along that trajectory, as long as you kept to the path and kept to the vibration of the path, most likely you're going to end up in a very similar point B. Very similar, not very different. The difference, though, that choices make, and where the choices really come into play, is it going to be one point, is it going to be the higher, the lower, or the middle timeline? Kind of, is what you're deciding, or road. And when I say timeline, gosh, don't want to create any confusion because there are so many light workers that are channeling about jumping timelines, etc. More often than not, you're jumping timelines within the one road. It actually takes an excessive amount of energy to be able to jump from one road to the other. So a lot of the timeline jumping is going to be done on the same path for people. It actually takes, like I said, so much to be able to jump anywhere else from the current path. However, this shift becomes very easy and very simple during those predetermined moments in time. It's almost like there is a happening that you higher self pre-planned. And it can be as simple as a marriage proposal. Maybe a marriage proposal is not simple, but in my mind it is. And like whether you say yes or you say no, you say, let me think about it, right? But it's a big moment in time. And I'm not saying every marriage proposal is a pivotal moment, but a lot of them are. And what you say to that marriage proposal may determine which path you're going to be rerouted to. And you should think about this pivotal moment as almost like a portal opening up. And in that span of the moment, in that portal, it's actually very easy to shift gears. But when the portal closes, it's actually not so easy anymore. And then, so it's, in other words, not every single choice you make is the same caliber of choice. There are some choices that we make that are quite mundane. Like it truly doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things if you end up taking on swimming or football, or neither, frankly. Like it really kind of doesn't matter for the most, for most of humans. But then there are pivotal choices where things really, really matter. Sometimes the pivotal choice would be like, hey, do you say yes to a spiritual calling when it's calling? Whatever the answer is may determine which path you're being rerouted to. The question that I'm getting from the collective is, does it ever happen that a soul acts in such an interesting way that they completely don't fit into any of the 3 paths? The answer is yes, it does happen. However, the gravity of the energies is so big, the gravity of the energy that you come with, the gravity of the energies that you absorb through, the surroundings in the first 10 years of your life is quite large. There's a lot of gravity there. And so because of that, it's almost like there's already a path predetermined for you. Could you make a 180 and go the other direction? In theory, yes. But a part of it would feel like going against everything that you are and everything that you love. I'll give you a quick example. Say there is an artistic soul that comes into this incarnation. And their higher self really wants them to create a masterpiece, like a painting that is going to be in the Louvre. This artistic soul, they went to art school and they won all of the awards, and they're, about to create their masterpiece. Because literally, that's their entire being. That's what they love to do. And changing and becoming an outlier from this point would mean that they drop, literally, painting and choose to become a pro athlete with the levels of an artist inside of that bottle. That is a drastic shift that would need to happen for your soul to make a choice that takes you outside of the map of possibility. Has it happened in history? Yes, absolutely. And then what happens? It's actually very interesting what happens then, because with souls like that, their path defies all reason. And very often, higher selves love watching what happens, because every single thing is up for grabs, right? Nothing is predetermined from there. And usually your higher self is not going to pull you back from there. So it is actually up to your higher self to see what it wants to donate their energy to. And it is actually within the realms of higher self's possibilities. If you jump too far outside of the map, it's like in this instance, it's almost like there was a chessboard and you jump off the board. Your higher self would be within its rights to cut the cord. I don't see that happen, though, very often. Your higher self would most likely just keep going and see where this leads you. The rest is history, because there's a whole lot of learning on this path. Ironically, though, if you completely jump off the board and if you don't go and play the game that has been set up in front of you, most likely in the next lifetime, your higher self is going to send you back with the same energies, with the same set of frequencies, to hopefully create that masterpiece in the next lifetime. That is where you're going to potentially get a lot of deja vu moments because it's a repeat. You have to repeat history, at least for the first part of your life before you became unhinged. But more often than not, the game is set up and the board is set up, and you don't really see too many souls jumping off of that board. Now, of course, if everything is predetermined, you say, how are we even practicing? For instance, if there is this big thing that we need to achieve or accomplish, and we're just not doing anything, well, in this instance, you would be on the lower path, right? If you're just not taking action and you're supposed to, then you would automatically go to the lower path. Your higher self, though, is always going to try to pull you back and pull you back and pull you back. There are, call it, tools in order to be able to influence somebody on their path, whether that is through dreams, whether that is through psychic messages, whether that is through synchronicities, whether that is through, kismet-like meetings that are pre-planned by your higher self. But your calling is going to keep on calling. Right? If you came here to write that masterpiece, to paint that picture that's going to be in the museum one day, then your higher self is going to set up enough of these moments, enough of these milestones along your path so that you can finally choose the right one, right? And once certain choices are made, for instance, once you're fully solidified on a particular path, some of these tests may become unnecessary and they just kind of drop off the board. So it's a beautiful and fascinating game. It's somewhat complex, and there's a whole lot of planning that goes into it from the higher self level. But of course, compared to us, they have an unlimited capacity for processing information. So that is, it's not really all that hard for them. I wanted to see if the collective had any questions for me on free will versus destiny. The question is, what if I don't love what my higher self has planned for me? It's adorable to me, but it's also very sad because, trust me, I have felt, especially, early stage of my awakening, I have certainly felt like my higher self was letting me down by putting me through the ringer. And I was like, why couldn't you just give me a simple mission? Why couldn't you just give me simple things to do? I don't have to work like a horse. This makes no sense. And I know that a lot of the people that have connected to their higher self and have received guidance did not love that guidance, did not enjoy that guidance. I will tell you this. Rebelling against your higher self will most likely lead you to that lower path over here. That is where 99% of rebels against our higher self end up, which is actually a very, very hard path to walk. This is where you have the least amount of money, the least amount of opportunity, the least amount of happiness, the worst health, just everything, right? It's, over time, you will find that your higher self is always on your side. You may not always understand the why behind things, but you can always ask. And I found that higher selves, despite the fact that they are the ones that are planning, and we're down here, the lower selves are the ones that are executing. The higher selves have a lot of compassion for us and for the challenges and for the hardships. So no, I don't think that it's actually possible to resist your higher self in this way. But it is, of course, possible to rebel. And it's being done over and over and over again by souls. Most likely, though, you're going to have to do a redo. So most likely you're going to have to come back and still walk at least the middle path until you can move on to the next stage and get your checkbox. So yeah, don't fully recommend that. The more you merge with the consciousness of your higher self, the more you go up, the more you connect upward, the more awareness you're going to have. And awareness in this game of life is everything. It's the answers to the question of why and understanding the little movements that you see on the chessboard. They only start making sense to you when you're fully connected. And then you realize that you're not the victim. And that, I think, is what helped me on my journey. I realized that I'm not the victim, right? And we're here not because we're trying to make a choice, but we're here because, I'm going to sound like the Matrix movie, the choice has already been made. Remember, we are not separate from our higher selves. So if your higher self wants something, that means that really the vastness of you wants that same thing. And in the moment, it may feel scary. But remember, despite everything, you want the same thing. And there's a lot of solace in that. I was actually at one point given an opportunity to completely redraft my incarnation. I don't know who needs to hear this. Somebody. I was not going to tell you this. There was a time when my guides came to me, my higher self came to me, and they said, Mariya, here's a one-time offer. It's going to expire. You're never going to get it in this lifetime. Here's your path that you're here to walk. And they told me exactly what I'm supposed to do in this lifetime, down to like the age that I die and all of the fun things. I don't find death morbid, by the way, so I love when they tell me. Because for me, death is like liberation. I get to do all these other things in all these other worlds. And then my guides were telling me, okay, Mariya, well, you don't have to do this, by the way. You can completely redraft your life based on what you want to do right now. And we're going to completely like just seal off the old contracts, and you're just going to move and do whatever you want to do. And they asked me, what is it that you want? And I spent so much time in contemplation, you guys, because I knew that that was like my one moment. And I realized that with who I am right now and the values that I have right now, the path that they have drawn for me is the most optimal path. Is it challenging? Yes. Is it going to take everything that I have? Yes. But is it going to be fun? Absolutely. And I wouldn't shift it. I wouldn't change it for anything else in the world. And so I have found that there's so much strength in surrender. And I found that even given the choice to change everything about how things have been pre-drafted for me, I still ended up choosing into the game. Because my higher self is heck of a great planner. And I know that your higher selves are as well. And that's what I want to leave you with. Trust your higher self. Trust the process. You're going to thank me later. So much love for you. I'll see you in the next one.